The great ships of the Galactic Concord hung in silence above the dead world. Below them, Earth was nothing but ash and stone. No oceans remained. No forests. No cities. The planet that once held 8 billion humans was now just a gray bowl floating in the cold darkness of Space. Ambassador Velith Kron stood at the viewing window of his ship. His gray skin reflected the dim light as he watched the ruined world below. 300 years had passed since the extermination war. 300 years since the Concord had decided that humanity was too dangerous to live. A necessary action, Velith said to the gathered delegates behind him. A painful decision, but the right one. The delegates nodded. They came from 12 different species. Some had scales. Some had fur. Others had skin of blue or green or purple. They were all different, but they all agreed on one thing. Humanity had to die. The ceremony happened every year. Ships from across the galaxy came to Earth to remember the war. They called it the Day of Wisdom, the day when the Concord saved itself from the human threat. Velith turned to face his audience. His yellow eyes moved across the crowd of aliens. The humans were young, he said. They had only traveled among the stars for 200 years. But in that short time, they spread like fire. 47 colonies. Billions of people. And their technology grew faster than any species we had ever seen. An old Vorthax general made a low sound of agreement. His name was Torvex Mann, and he had fought in the war as a young soldier. He remembered the humans. He remembered how they fought. They were monsters, Torvex said. I watched a single human soldier hold a corridor against 20 of my warriors. He was wounded. He was dying. But he would not stop fighting. Not until his heart stopped beating. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. Even after 300 years, the memory of human soldiers made them nervous. This is why we acted, Velith continued. Not out of hate. Out of fear. The humans adapted too quickly. They learned too fast. In another century, they would have surpassed us all. We had no choice. The Concord's attack had been swift and total. 400 war fleets struck at the same moment. Earth burned first. Then the colonies fell one by one. The humans fought hard. They fought with everything they had. But there were too many enemies, and the attack came without warning. In 6 months, it was over. Every human world was glass and ash. Every human ship was destroyed. The species that had risen so fast was gone forever, or so the Concord believed. Far away, beyond the edge of the galaxy, there was a place called the Outer Void. No stars burned there. No planets orbited. It was empty and cold and dark. The Concord's sensors could not reach it. No ship had ever traveled there and returned. In that darkness, something moved. A small machine floated in the endless black. It was old and covered in dust. For 300 years, it had waited in silence. It was a beacon built by human hands long ago, programmed to wait for a signal that might never come. The signal came. Deep in the void, lights began to glow. Engines that had been cold for centuries started to warm. The beacon received the command it had waited for, and it began to broadcast. The message was simple. It traveled on frequencies the Concord did not monitor. It spoke in a language they had tried to erase from history. The long night ends. The children are coming home. Back at Earth, the ceremony continued. Velith finished his speech, and the delegates applauded politely. They returned to their ships and prepared to leave. Another year of remembrance was complete. None of them noticed the tiny flicker on their long-range sensors. It was so far away, so faint, that the computers marked it as background noise. A mistake. Nothing important. Torvex Mann paused at his ship's airlock. He was old now. His scales faded and cracked. But he still remembered the war. He still had nightmares about it. Something felt wrong. He could not explain it. The air seemed heavier. The darkness of space seemed deeper. He looked out at the stars and felt a chill run through his old bones. Is something wrong, General? His aide asked. Torvek stared into the void for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No, he said. Just old memories. He walked into his ship and left the dead Earth behind. The fleet broke apart, each vessel returning to its own corner of the galaxy. They flew back to their comfortable lives, their safe worlds, their peaceful existence. They did not know that their peace was about to end. In the outer void, more lights were waking up. Ships that had hidden for 3 centuries were coming back to life. Their crews, descendants of the survivors, prepared for the journey home. They had waited long enough. They had suffered long enough. They had grown strong in the darkness, and now it was time. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was coming back. And this time, they would not be caught by surprise. The beacon's message continued to broadcast, echoing through the empty space between galaxies. The words repeated over and over, a promise and a warning. The long night ends. The children are coming home. 6 months passed after the remembrance ceremony. Life in the Galactic Concorde continued as normal. Ships traveled between stars. Merchants sold their goods. Politicians argued about taxes and treaties. Nobody thought about the dead, humans anymore. Then things started to go wrong. It began with a mining station near the galaxy's edge. The station belonged to the Thylorians and employed 300 workers. One day, all communication stopped. No distress signal. No warning. The station simply went silent. A patrol ship was sent to investigate. It found the station empty. The workers were gone. The equipment was untouched. Food still sat on tables, half-eaten. It was as if everyone had simply vanished in the middle of their day. The Concorde called it a mystery and sent investigators. They found nothing. 2 weeks later, a Vorthax patrol fleet reported strange contacts on their sensors. Unknown ships moving fast through a region of dead space. The fleet commander sent a message asking for orders. He never received an answer. He never sent another message. The entire fleet disappeared. More incidents followed. A cargo convoy vanished in the Keth Nebula. A science vessel stopped responding near an old human colony world. A military outpost on the frontier went dark. The pattern was always the same. No warning. No survivors. No explanation. Cirith Van noticed the pattern. Cirith was an intelligence officer for Concorde Security. She had blue skin, silver eyes, and a mind that never stopped working. Her job was to find threats before they became problems. And right now, she saw a very big problem forming. She spread a star map across her desk and marked each incident with a red dot. The dots formed a line. That line moved inward toward the core of Concorde space. And every single dot was near a system that had once belonged to humans. This is not a coincidence, she muttered to herself. Cirith took her findings to her commander. He was a fat Thylorian named Doric, who cared more about his lunch than his job. Pirates, Doric said without looking up from his food. The frontier is full of criminals. Pirates do not make entire fleets disappear, Cirith argued. And they do not leave mining stations empty with food still on the tables. Doric waved his hand dismissively. Then it is some unknown species. We will send more patrols. The disappearances are happening near human space. Old human space. The room went quiet. Doric finally looked at her. The humans are dead, he said slowly. We killed them all 300 years ago. Did we? Cirith asked. Did we check every ship? Every station? Every corner of the galaxy? The war was total. Nothing survived. Cirith placed a data chip on his desk. I found this in the wreckage near the Keth Nebula. Fragments of a transmission. The language is old, but our computers eventually translated it. Doric picked up the chip with trembling fingers. What does it say? It says, hold position. Main fleet will arrive in 6 cycles. The language is English. Human English. Doric's face went pale. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he shook his head and pushed the chip away. Impossible. This is a trick. Someone is playing games with us. Cirith wanted to scream. She wanted to grab him and shake him until he understood. But she knew it would do no good. The Concorde had spent 300 years telling itself that humanity was gone. They could not accept any other truth. She left his office and continued her investigation alone. Took her another month to find the final piece of evidence. A black box from a destroyed Vorthax cruiser. The ship had been attacked near the frontier, and its recorder had been thrown clear of the explosion. Cirith played the recording in her private quarters. At first, there was only static. Then voices. Vorthax officers shouting orders. Alarms screaming. Weapons firing. Then came the image. The cruiser's cameras had captured the attacking ship for 3 seconds before the feed died. 3 seconds was enough. The ship was huge. Bigger than anything the Vorthax had. Its hull was black and angular, covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Old damage marked its surface, scars from battles long ago that had been repaired but never erased. And on its side, painted in white letters that Cirith could barely read, was a name, HSS Vengeance, HSS, Human Starship. Below the name was a symbol she recognized from old history files. A blue circle with green and brown shapes inside. The planet Earth. Cirith stopped the recording. Her hands were shaking. The ship was not alone. In the background of the image, she could see more shapes. Dozens of them. Hundreds. A fleet of human warships hiding in the darkness. Waiting. Humanity was alive. Humanity had been waiting for 300 years. And now they were coming. Cirith knew she had to warn the Concorde. She had to make them listen. But as she prepared her report, she felt a cold fear growing in her chest. The humans had survived the greatest attack in galactic history. They had hidden in the darkness for 3 centuries. They had built ships and weapons in secret, while the Concorde grew soft and lazy. What else had they built? What else had they become? Cirith looked at the image of the human warship and wondered if anyone in the galaxy was ready for the answer. The Concorde finally decided to act when an entire battle group disappeared near Keth Prime. Keth Prime was not some distant outpost. It was a major military hub, home to shipyards and weapons factories and 2 million soldiers. When 20 warships vanished just outside its orbit, the Concorde could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. High Admiral Torvek's man was given command of the response fleet. The old general had not wanted the job. He was retired, tired, and haunted by memories of the last war. But the Concorde needed someone who had fought humans before. Someone who understood the enemy. Torvex gathered 200 warships from across the galaxy. It was the largest fleet assembled since the Extermination War. Thylorian destroyers flew alongside Vorthax cruisers. Kithari carriers launched their fighters. The full might of the Concorde moved toward Keth Prime. Cirith Van was on the command ship. She had finally convinced her superiors to listen. Now she stood beside Torvex on the bridge, watching the stars fly past. "What do you expect to find?" Torvex asked her. "I do not know," Cirith admitted. The black box showed human ships, but that recording was months old. They could have an entire armada by now. Torvex nodded slowly. His old eyes stared at the view screen. "I remember fighting them," he said quietly. "The humans. They were not like other enemies. When you killed one, the others did not run. They got angry. They fought harder. I have never seen anything like it. The fleet arrived at Keth Prime 3 days later. They found the missing battle group immediately. 20 warships floated in space, dark and silent. Their engines were cold. Their weapons were offline. They drifted like dead leaves on water. No life signs, an officer reported. Wait, that is wrong. I am detecting life signs. All crew members are alive. Alive? Torvex leaned forward. Then why are the ships dead? Unknown, Admiral. The crews appear to be sleeping. Torvex felt the same cold feeling he had felt months ago at Earth. Something was very wrong here. Send boarding parties, he ordered. I want to know what happened. Before the order could be carried out, the sensors screamed. Contact. The officer shouted. Multiple contacts. They are everywhere. Space itself seemed to tear open. Points of light appeared around the Concorde fleet, growing larger and brighter. From each point, ships emerged. Human ships thought they came from every direction, above and below, left and right, in front and behind. There was no escape. The Concorde fleet was surrounded. Torvex watched in horror as the human armada revealed itself. There were not dozens of ships. There were not hundreds. There were thousands. Warships of every size filled the space around Keth Prime. Small fighters flew in perfect formation. Cruisers and destroyers moved like wolves circling prey. And in the center of it all, one ship dominated everything. It was a dreadnought, 5 kilometers long. Its hull was black as night, covered in armor that seemed to drink the light. Weapons bristled from every surface. Engines glowed with blue fire. But what made Torvex's blood freeze was the writing on its hull. Names. Thousands of names, painted in white letters across the entire ship. Earth, Luna, New Shanghai, Kepler's Hope, Prometheus Station. Every human world that had been destroyed. Every colony that had burned. Every name was there, a memorial and a promise. The ship was called the HS Lazarus. A transmission cut through all frequencies. Every screen on every Concorde ship showed the same image, a human woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals. Her face showed no anger, no hatred, only a terrible, patient calm. I am Fleet Admiral Chun Wei of the Human Remnant, she said. You believed our species was extinct. You held ceremonies above our burned worlds. You celebrated our death for 300 years. She paused. The silence was heavy. You were wrong. Torvex found his voice. This is High Admiral Torvex, man. We thought you were all dead. The war. We know what you thought, Chun Wei interrupted. We watched your ceremonies. We listened to your speeches. We heard you call us monsters. We heard you say our extinction was necessary. She leaned forward slightly. For 300 years, we survived in the darkness beyond your galaxy. We raised our children in cold ships far from any star. We buried our dead in the void. We remembered every world you burned, every child you killed, every name you tried to erase. The human ships began to move, tightening the circle around the Concorde fleet. We could have died, Chun Wei continued. We could have faded away like you wanted. But we did not. We endured. We grew. We built. And now we have returned. Torvex looked at his tactical display. His 200 ships were surrounded by thousands. His weapons were strong, but the human fleet was overwhelming. There was no way to win this fight. All ships, Torvex said quietly. Retreat. Maximum speed. Break through their lines and, Admiral, Cirith interrupted, pointing at the screen. The human ships had already moved. Every escape route was blocked. The Concorde fleet was trapped. Chen Wei spoke one last time. You taught us something 300 years ago. You taught us that the galaxy has no mercy. We learned that lesson well. The human weapons began to glow. Now it is time for your lesson. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, not a single Concorde ship escaped. 300 years ago, when the Concorde's fleets came to destroy humanity, a small group of people knew what was about to happen. Admiral Sarah Chun was one of them. She had seen the enemy ships gathering. She had done the math. She knew humanity could not win the war. There were too many enemies, and the attack would come from every direction at once. So she made a choice, while the human military prepared to fight a hopeless battle. Sarah Chun gathered every ship she could find. Cargo vessels, mining ships, colony transports, anything that could carry people and fly through space. She loaded them with civilians, supplies, and everything needed to survive. Then she sent them into the darkness. The outer void was a region beyond the galaxy's edge. No stars burned there. No planets existed. It was cold and empty and completely unknown. The Concorde had never explored it because there was nothing to find. That was exactly why Sarah Chun chose it. The evacuation fleet flew for months. They left the galaxy behind and entered the endless black. Many ships broke down. Many people died. But enough survived. Enough reached the darkness and hid. They called it the Long Night. For the first 50 years, survival was the only goal. The refugees lived in their ships, never setting foot on solid ground. They ate recycled food and drank recycled water. They had children who were born in metal corridors and never saw a sun. It was hard. It was painful. Many wanted to give up. But the humans remembered what the Concorde had done. They remembered Earth burning. They remembered their families dying. And they refused to let their species end. By the 100th year, things had changed. The humans had found asteroids in the void and hollowed them out. They built stations and factories. They developed new technology because they had no choice. The old ways would not work in the darkness. They had to invent new ways, and they did. Human scientists created engines that could fold space itself, letting ships travel faster than anything the Concorde had ever built. Human engineers designed weapons that could bend gravity into a deadly force. Human doctors found ways to keep people healthy in the cold and dark. Most importantly, human leaders kept the people united. They created a new government called the Remnant. Every child learned the history of Earth. Every soldier trained for the day they would return home. Every person carried the names of the dead worlds in their hearts. 300 years of waiting. 300 years of suffering. 300 years of growing stronger. Now the long night was over, and the galaxy would learn what humanity had become. News of the battle at Keth Prime spread fast. The Concorde had lost 200 warships in 4 minutes. High Admiral Torvex Mann was dead. The human fleet was moving deeper into Concorde space. Panic followed. The Galactic Concorde called an emergency meeting. Leaders from all 12 species gathered to decide what to do. The arguments began immediately. "We must attack," the Thalarian ambassador shouted. "Send every ship we have. Destroy them before they reach our homeworlds." "With what ships?" A Vorthax general replied. "They wiped out our largest fleet like it was nothing. Their technology is beyond anything we have." "Then we negotiate," suggested a Cathari diplomat. "We offer them peace. We apologize for the war." The Thalorian laughed bitterly. "Apologize? We killed billions of their people. We burned their homeworld. Do you think an apology will be enough?" Cirith Van was there, watching from the back of the room. She had survived the battle at Keth Prime because she was on one of the ships the humans had disabled instead of destroyed. She woke up floating in space, Her ship dead, but her crew alive. The humans had let them live. That told her something important. They are not attacking civilian targets, Cirrus said, stepping forward. Every system they have taken, the civilians are unharmed. They only destroy military forces. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at her. What are you saying? The Thalorian demanded. I am saying they are not here for genocide. If they wanted to kill everyone, they would have started already. They have the power to do it. But they have not. Then what do they want? Cirrus remembered Fleet Admiral Chen Wei's face on the screen. The cold eyes. The patient calm. The terrible weight of 300 years of waiting. I think they want justice, Cirrus said. They want us to answer for what we did. The leaders argued for hours. They could not agree on anything. The Thalorians wanted war. The Vorthax wanted surrender. The Cathari wanted negotiation. The alliance that united to destroy humanity was falling apart. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to advance. System after system fell. Military bases were destroyed. Defense stations were captured. The Concorde's navy was being taken apart piece by piece. And through it all, the humans sent the same message to every world they passed. We are not here to destroy you. We are here for the ones who destroyed us. Surrender them, and you will be spared. Protect them, and you will share their fate. The long night had taught humanity many things. It had taught them patience. It had taught them strength. It had taught them how to survive against impossible odds. But it had also taught them something else. Something that would decide the fate of the galaxy. It had taught them the difference between vengeance and justice. The question now was whether the Concorde could understand that difference before it was too late. The human fleet arrived at Thalorian Prime on a cold morning. The Thalorian people looked up at their sky and saw death waiting above them. Thousands of warships hung in orbit, blocking out the stars. The great dreadnought Lazarus dominated the center, its hull covered with the names of murdered worlds. Emperor Velthan III stood in his palace and watched the ships. Through his window, he was the descendant of the emperor who had first proposed humanity's extinction. His family had ruled for centuries, proud of their role in saving the galaxy. Now that pride turned to ash in his mouth. How many ships do we have left? He asked his general. 47, Your Majesty. The rest were destroyed trying to stop their advance. 47 ships against thousands. It was not even a contest. Then we will die with honor, the emperor said. We will not surrender to animals. But even as he spoke, his people were already making their own choice. Across the planet, Thalorians were flooding the streets. Not to fight, not to flee. They were calling for peace. They were calling for surrender. 300 years of propaganda had taught them to hate humans, but 3 months of watching the Concorde's military get destroyed had taught them something stronger. Fear. A transmission came from the Lazarus. Every screen on the planet showed the same face. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chun, grandson of Sarah Chun, the woman who had led humanity into the darkness 3 centuries ago. He looked tired. His hair was gray. His uniform was simple. He did not look like a conqueror. He looked like a man carrying a very heavy weight. People of Thalorian Prime, he began. I am not here to destroy your world. I am not here to kill your children. I am not here to do to you what you did to us. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with emotion. My grandmother was 26 years old when Earth burned. She watched from her ship as our homeworld died. She carried that memory for the rest of her life. She passed it to my mother. My mother passed it to me. Images appeared on the screen. Old photographs, videos, records of the extermination war. Human cities burning. Human ships exploding. Human bodies floating in space. 8 billion people lived on Earth, Marcus continued. Another 6 billion lived in our colonies. In 6 months, you killed them all. Women, children, the old, the sick. You did not spare anyone. You did not show mercy. You decided that our entire species should die, and you made it happen. The Emperor watched with cold eyes. We did what was necessary, he muttered. We survived, Marcus said, as if he had heard. We fled into the void. We lived in darkness for 300 years. Our children grew up never seeing a sun. Our people died from cold and hunger and despair. But we did not give up. We remembered. And we waited. The human fleet began to move. Ships took position above the major cities. Weapons powered up. The moment of truth had arrived. I could destroy your world right now, Marcus said. I could kill every Thylorian alive and call it justice. My people would cheer. The ghosts of 14 billion humans would rest easier. And no one in the galaxy would blame us. The Emperor held his breath. But I will not. Silence fell across the planet. We spent 300 years in the darkness. 300 years learning how to survive. 300 years becoming stronger than we ever were before. But we also spent those years asking ourselves one question. What kind of people do we want to be? Marcus leaned forward. You called us monsters. You said we were too dangerous to live. You said our aggression, our determination, our refusal to give up made us a threat to the galaxy. Maybe you were right. Maybe those things do make us dangerous. His voice grew firm. But they also make us human. And being human means we get to choose. We can choose revenge or we can choose justice. We can choose to become the monsters you feared, or we can prove that we are better than that. Better than you. He straightened up. These are our terms. The leaders who planned and ordered the extermination war will surrender themselves for trial. The Concord will acknowledge the genocide it committed. Humanity will reclaim our ancestral territory and rebuild our civilization. In return, we will not destroy your worlds. We will not kill your people. We will show you the mercy you never showed us. The Emperor stared at the screen. His hands trembled. His advisors whispered urgently, telling him to refuse, to fight, to die with dignity. But the Emperor looked out his window at the crowds in the streets. His people begging for peace. His children hiding in the basement. His world helpless before the human fleet. He had spent his life believing that humanity's extinction was right and necessary. Now humanity stood above his world, offering him a choice his ancestors had never offered them. Slowly, the Emperor lowered his head. I accept your terms, he said. 1 year later, a little girl stood on the surface of New Earth. The planet was still mostly empty, freshly terraformed, waiting for the humans who would soon fill it with life. But the sky was blue. The sun was warm. And the grass beneath her feet was soft and green. Her name was Sarah, named after the woman who had saved humanity 300 years ago. She was 5 years old, and she was the first human child born under a yellow sun in 3 centuries. Her father stood beside her, watching her play in the sunlight. He had been born in the darkness of the void. He had never felt wind on his face until last year. He had never seen a sky until last month. Now he watched his daughter laugh and run through the grass, and he felt something he had never felt before. Hope above them. Ships moved across the sky. Human ships. Thylorian ships. Vorthak ships. They flew together now, not as enemies, but as neighbors. The peace was uneasy. The wounds were still fresh. It would take generations to heal, but it had begun. Humanity had returned from the darkness. They had faced the choice between vengeance and justice, and they had chosen to be better. The long night was over. The dawn had come.